You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to do a Walmart holiday prep deep dive. We just, a lot of questions out there right now. We saw Prime Day with Amazon be kind of so-so. There's been a lot of questions in that space of what it's going to look like for Amazon. I have a lot of brands saying, hey, we still need to diversify quite a bit, and how can we dive into what Walmart is thinking about for Q4 as a whole and holiday? And so who better to bring in, right, than Michael Lebhar here from SellCord, longtime friend, partner, supporter of the network, just all around great dude, man. Like, thanks for jumping on. Like, you want to jump in and tell people a little bit about, your background yourself, and then we'll jump into Walmart holiday prep. Sound good?
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this. Michael, I'm the founder of SellCord. I started off as a seller on Amazon, then became a Walmart seller, saw good success on Walmart.com, got into Walmart retail, and really realized how fast Walmart was growing, and that brands didn't really have the capabilities to really focus in on the tactical aspect of Walmart like they were approaching other online retailers, and realized how much lift you could see from doing that. So we launched SellCord, where we're a Walmart exclusive agency. We exclusively focus on Walmart. We're a holistic platform. So at our core, we're a service, acts as an extension of brands teams to help them on Walmart. But then we have an ad platform called Dashna. We have a couple other solutions for reviews, and then a couple solutions for auditing and reimbursements. So we have a bunch of different solutions we built to support Walmart seller suppliers. And we manage over 500 brands and around $6 billion in Walmart GMV. So we've been able to get pretty integrated into the space and be able to see a lot of what works, what doesn't. And I love diving into it.
Yeah, I think it's awesome though. Like, you nailed it. So you're on Amazon and you go to jump over to Walmart and realize it's completely untapped, right? Like it's nearly completely untapped.
So quickly, and all the like little tips, tricks, and strategies that used to work on Amazon that just got so saturated, they work on Walmart. And the really cool thing about Walmart that really stood out to me is like when you unlock on other channels, like when you unlock a digital strategy, it brings you X amount of more sales and momentum. But with Walmart, when you unlock that, oftentimes that leads to like more in-store success or a stronger merchant relationship, or, where oftentimes there's a much larger output that comes through that. So that's also been what's really cool, is how it all ties in together with the store business, if you have a store business with Walmart.
What do brands miss? I want to get into this holiday, prep and all, how do people prepare for it? But I'm super interested on this. Like, what do brands miss on Walmart? Because there's still that hesitancy. Hey, it's only, going to be 2 to 3, maybe 5% of my Amazon sales. Is it even worth it? In my mind, I take a step back, like, you have to at least try it, right? But then if they try it, a lot of times it's that self-fulfilling prophecy of, hey, it's only going to be 2 to 3, maybe 5% max. So then they don't give it the effort or the attention it needs. And so they never see the gains. Like, I'd love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, so I think one thing with Walmart is it's really interesting is for different brands, there's a few buckets that you fall into, right? So it's either you're a digital brand and you're just trying to drive digital sales, and you're looking at Walmart as a way to kind of increase your digital sales. Depending on your category and the type of items you have, will determine, the percentage penetration that you could have with Walmart. Some categories are stronger, some categories are not as strong with Walmart. But regardless, it's growing at such a fast pace that the earlier you get in, you're able to kind of go for the ride. So that's why, across the board, it makes sense for brands to participate in Walmart.com, because you get in earlier, and, as Walmart's growing, you're able to be in a good position. But where it really comes down to with Walmart.com is you have brands that want to get into Walmart retail, right? And they're not in Walmart retail yet. It's very difficult to do that without being on Walmart Marketplace first. If you talk to most merchants, they're going to ask you, to prove your concept first, show that you're invested in Walmart as a whole, show that, and they're not expecting a ton of sales on the marketplace or you to drive a ton of digital sales. They want to see you're invested as a partner, that you're taking digital seriously and all that. So you have brands that do that. Then you have brands that are in store already. You have large national businesses with Walmart, but their digital penetration is lacking. And for them, why it's really critical to be on Walmart.com is two things. Number one, to protect their turf, right? If Walmart sees that another supplier is actually gaining good visibility digitally, then they're going to start considering them more for your shelf placement. But proactively speaking, we work with a lot of national brands that they want to actually, come into their line reviews more prepared. Not just be like, oh, I have a great item, but I actually have sales on your platform to prove it and all that. So a lot of times they build up their digital more from that angle. So there's really different reasons why brands can kind of lean into it. But, depending on your category, your type of items, your value prop, there is a lot of revenue to drive just from doing, the right work and setting up properly on the channel. So besides for all the other added lift that comes from being successful on a platform like Walmart, I think it's just getting more and more interesting as, the platform evolves. For example, as it relates to like Google advertising, Google shopping, I saw the news that like Amazon's pulling out from a lot of the Google advertising, or almost all of it. With Walmart, they're spending heavily on Google. Also, their domain authority is really high. So, you'll see your listings come up really, so it's just about like, there's a certain amount of lift that comes from just showing up properly on the channel, right? Where, Walmart's actually going to drive it. Like there's a lot of customers on there, but then there's, if you really want to take it seriously, there's all these things you could do. And it does take a lot of lift, but there's all these things you could do to actually outsell all your competitors on the channel.
So let's just keep rolling with that topic then and roll it right into like, when you're dealing with brands that are saying, hey, I want to go all in on Walmart for holiday, right? And whether that's Turkey 5 or Turkey 35 now, like whatever, it keeps getting bigger and bigger. What are those key things that people need to be thinking about? How's Walmart thinking about it? And then, if I'm a brand and I want to show them I'm going all in, right? There's a couple things that I heard there. One is a smaller brand, you can play offense. And as a bigger brand, you definitely need to play defense on these smaller brands that now have a methodology for figuring out how to excel on the platform. And not only the methodology for excelling, but they will be rewarded, right? Or there's a huge chance they could be rewarded with getting in store, which at the end of the day, that's where everybody wants to get. Right? Not everybody, but we'll say 99%. They see that the amount of distribution they can get on the marketplace is limited. But if you can get on shelf in Walmart, the business explodes. So, yeah, I rambled there just a little, but I'm pumped about this conversation. So you're talking about brands prepping for Q4.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So I think it's really a few stages, and it depends what stage you're in. But assume you're on the platform, you have some activations going, but you're not leaning into it so heavily. So what I would say is that at first, you always want to make sure your content optimization is really strong. With Walmart, it's very different than other channels. The keywords that have volume on Walmart are different than other channels. With Walmart, there's much more density. So like smaller amount of keywords that have real significant volume. And those keywords have proportionally more than long tail keywords. So you're going to want to really like find those right keywords and really make sure that your listing is all honed in on those keywords. This is obvious, but we've done a ton of tests, and like we're doing a ton of optimization of descriptions, key features, and just with small changes in the title, the impact is 5 to 10x depending on some of the factors. So with content optimization, obviously you want to make sure you're in a really good spot. Then when it comes to really activating your content, Walmart's very heavily focused on conversion rates. Other channels are much more focused on sales volume. Walmart's very focused on conversion rate when it comes to ranking. So you really want to make sure you're doing whatever you can before you're driving a lot of additional traffic to your listing for conversion rate. Some things people do is like enhanced content. There's a lot of things you can do on Walmart with enhanced content. So you just want to do whatever you can for increasing conversion rates. Once all those boxes are checked.
And really quick on that, this is distinctly different than from Amazon. So don't port your Amazon strategy directly over content, keywords, all of that, which I know a lot of people do. You're saying, you can do it, but you're never going to get fully optimized on the Walmart side.
Exactly. Yeah. With Walmart, it's so different how all the algorithm is structured, and then affects a lot how you show up properly. Walmart releases partially. We have access to data, which I think is pretty cool, which is all the keywords, all the top keywords on Walmart, and then who each of the top five top most clicked and converted items are for each of those keywords. So through there, you could kind of map out and be like, okay, this item is top for that keyword. I know that my item is pretty relevant for that top item, so I should go after that keyword because you know that customers are already converting for that. So through there, you could actually build your media strategy and a lot of your share of the category strategy. We like to really track all our share of voice across all the key keywords, see what lift we're able to get organically from doing all the organic optimizations. And when it comes from a media standpoint, we're able to address and be able to measure the impact of any of our media spend incrementally through all the share of voice tracking that we're doing, because then we're able to see all these keywords have this amount of volume. We're showing up X percentage for these keywords. When we increased our media, yes, our sponsored share grew, obviously, but our organic share grew X percent, which leads to X amount of dollars, whatever the equation is. So I think with advertising in general, before you go in with any retail media just keep getting more and more and more expensive. So I think the key is, how do you measure your retail media, not just to the ROAS you get, but to the incrementality that is driving. And I think it's especially prevalent before holiday, because for a lot of categories and a lot of products, spending during holidays sometimes not affordable, because the cost per clicks are so expensive that a lot of times you're margin negative. And especially on Walmart, Walmart's pretty promotional heavy, especially during holiday. You're offering all these promotions, but you're also expected to spend more on advertising. Otherwise, you're not getting the placements. So I think one of the best ways to prepare for holiday is really make sure your content optimization is really strong, because any organic boost you get during that time frame is obviously worth a lot more. But then actually work on the advertising pre-holiday to boost your organic ranking. So during holiday, yes, you might not be in the top position, but you're going to be fighting for there organically, and you're going to be pretty close up there organically because you spend efficiently prior to holiday.
So step one, I mean, it goes back to the basics of content. Like, do people reach out? Do you just do like a content optimization package? Could you just, I mean, you're doing this all day, right? Do you just jump in and help brands with it? Because I think brands have gotten really, really good at doing this for Amazon, but Walmart is still kind of a black box to them that, I mean, they could figure it out, but let's be real. Like, reduction in, team sizes has been a thing over the past 6 to 9 months. People are doing more than ever. Like, do you just step in and say, hey, we'll take care of all this content? Like, how does...
Yeah, so we do a lot of that. We like doing is taking your content from other channels, or even if it's on Walmart, taking in that content and then reprioritizing specifically for Walmart. We have a really efficient way to do it. We're really focused on tracking the impact from our content optimization. So like, we'll go into all your items before making any changes. We'll track all the keywords. We'll track the rank. We'll track the sales, all of that. We'll start scraping for all that data. Then once we have all that, we'll actually implement all our content changes, and then we'll be able to see the lift. Sometimes when you make changes, it doesn't work as well, and sometimes it does much better. So whatever's not working, you could try something else or go back, and whatever is working, you just double down on that across more items. And we just constantly do that. But yeah, we do it for so many items across all categories. We're working right now with a client who has a project with, I think it's like 14 or 15,000 items. And we're redoing all the content for all those items because there's just so much. And we started with our first batch of like, I think it was like 500 items. We see the lift from that, and then we're like, hey, this is what's working, this is what's not. And then we continue. And because we've done so many items on Walmart, we see what's working and what's not. But it's worth it regardless. But when you're tying it to media spend before you're spending any media dollars, especially with how expensive it's getting, it's just really important to get ahead of that.
Yeah. I mean, you look back a few years ago, not as important, but there is a lot of cash pouring into Walmart.com on the retail media side now. It's the same thing that happens with PPCs on Amazon back in the day. So content, like, number one, you have to look at it. You have to look at it, optimizing it for a Walmart platform. And then we're getting into paid media. And this sounds really similar. I don't think you'd be surprised to like an Amazon, like Prime Day prep, right? Do it ahead of time because it's super expensive during the actual event. The difference is Q4 is a lot longer. And so it's very interesting. So this will come out, I don't know, late August, early September, this podcast here. I mean, that's prime time for people to go at it, because then you have October, November, December, like we're essentially right there. What's happening? Like, can you walk us through Walmart, their paid media, like how you look at it? We're going to assume content has been optimized. We're approaching Q4. Like, what are the platforms? What a little bit more about the platform and the different offerings and what works, what doesn't, how people should be thinking about it.
Yeah, so with Walmart advertising, obviously there's sponsored products, right? Where it's pay per click for sponsored products. Then you have like sponsored brand, which is like a headline advertisement on the top that you can click to a few items. You have a brand logo, and then you have sponsored video, which also those are all keyword based, right? So you're showing based on keywords, and you're showing on the product pages specifically. Those are sponsored product. When you're starting with at Walmart advertising, obviously you're just almost always going to get the highest return with sponsored product, and then sponsored brand and sponsored video. Sponsored video prices just went down. They used the minimum clicks to be higher, so the cost went down on those. So like, in places where if you're competing in spots where for your main keywords there isn't anybody running sponsored video, there's a lot of times it's going to be cheaper than sponsored product, because sometimes brands are slow to get their sponsored video up and they're not managing and optimizing well. So that's the core. Then the next layer is really display. Now, display, in order to run display on Walmart, you used to have like large minimum budgets, and it used to have to be managed service. Now Walmart came out with a few months ago, which display self-serve, which is called DSS. And you don't have minimum budget requirements on there. You're able to do audience targeting. It's obviously not going to be as deep as you're able to do with some larger budget like full display offsite and on-site display campaigns, but you're able to have and we like doing this, especially when we have a brand that's going live in store. Let's say it's a regional launch, right? And we want to target specific areas, or our units per store per week is pretty low in like a certain segment, and we want to target, or we know our customer base really well and who converts really well. And we know it's a certain demographic, with on-site display, we're able to do that. We've been seeing really, really strong returns through on-site display. So that's a really cool initiative that we've been leaning in a lot more heavily on.
Yeah. So from the standpoint, I know, so with Amazon, once you get over a certain number of products, once you get over a certain threshold to spend, you can't do it really without an agency or a tech, right? Is that the same that you're seeing for Walmart? I mean, it's just the reality. You can't be monitoring and changing bids, 1,000 times a day for every one of your items. So, I mean, nobody can do that, but maybe if you only had 4 or 5 items, you can probably handle it okay. But at scale, you can't. Are you seeing the same thing with Walmart? Like, you need
similarly, I think with Walmart, it's a little bit complex because they have, just because you're bidding more doesn't mean you're always winning the spot. Your item has to be pretty relevant for the keyword. And a lot of times, brands are spending and trying to put budget behind it, but they're just not seeing any traction or enough spend. And it's a lot of times tied to relevancy and how the initial campaigns were set up, or something to do with the listing itself. And because of how it's tied in, sometimes media teams don't have enough of that context or some of that, and because of how Walmart works so differently. So that's one area. Another area is just after you get to a certain point, like we've been able to build a lot of insights, analytics, and automation products specifically around the Walmart advertising platform, so that we're able to get more efficient with how we spend, specifically with like day parting and other things to kind of help with that. So, I would say it depends how much you're trying to grow. I think Walmart Connect could really be run internally, but if you're really trying to scale a lot more, you have a lot of items, or you're just really trying to double up your spend and keep your profitability or increase that, I think working with a group that does a lot of advertising, you just get that advantage of like Walmart.com and Advertising Connect is growing so quickly. There's so many nuances. And if you just adjust to some of those nuances really quickly, you have the upper hand. So we've been doing a lot of that. I think with display, for example, on-site display self-serve is much newer, and there's so many, untapped opportunities there. So we've been able to kind of scale pretty quickly there.
So we lock in our content, we lock in our plan around advertising, and this is all, I would say, pre Q4, pre holiday, so maybe a little later in September into October a little bit. Um, then what does it look like when it's go time in holiday season? From an advertising standpoint, are you just seeing people keep the budget the same, but then overall, because cost goes up, it's just less? Or are you seeing people ramp up budget or drop budget? And then the next thing I want to do, what do you think is going to happen like on the promo side, and how important is that going to be this year?
Yeah, so Walmart's very into curated experiences. Like they don't, especially for their promotions, like they really want good deals. It's not about just putting a ton of deals together. They get very focused on really strong deals and then kind of really strongly promoting those. So promos really matter a lot. Also, there's the Walmart customer is going to see so many deals during those promotional time frames. So even if you're raising retails prior, so you're able to have a higher MSRP and then able to show better value, whatever you're doing or you're offering actually really good promos, whatever you're doing to just play along with the promo time frame is going to be critical because customers, when there's so many deals going on, they're really hesitant to buy from items that aren't on deal, and it's just perceived value. So I think number one, that's really important. Walmart leans in very heavily to that. And Walmart's spending a lot on external traffic during those timeframes to drive into Walmart. So all their spends are going to go up across all media to just drive into Walmart. So you want to make sure you're showing up really high for that. We're doing a lot of programs with influencers driving influencer traffic into Walmart.com with commission rates. So there's a lot of things we're doing around that angle to really drive there. But there's a ton of traffic coming into Walmart. So you want to make sure your promotional strategy is really tight. And then from a budget standpoint, most brands honestly are tight on it until Q4 comes in and the budgets open up a lot. We're trying to push a lot more of the brands to take some of that Q4 budget and spend it a couple months prior, so that you're able to build a little more momentum. But in general, just the way a lot of those budgets are built and a lot of it is outlined is just during Q4, they're just much larger, much stronger, which makes sense. But I do think it's worthwhile looking at spending a little bit more prior to that, and even if you're taking away from some Q4 budget. Even though conversion rates are higher Q4, but if you're organic, there's not enough time during Q4 a lot of times to build up your organic ranking enough prior to the event. So
Yeah, and then what about post holiday? Any recommendations there?
yeah, so post holiday, I think what's really important is that things are a little bit all over the place. So sometimes you might have sales down on a couple items because a competitor might be trying to clear out some stock, or they might just thought they were going to move more volume and all that. So you want to, so to say, like really take a look at the market and see what's going on in our experience, especially when it comes to marketplace, because brands are taking that inventory risk. So they sent in a lot of inventory into Walmart. They own that inventory and now it's sitting there. So sometimes for some items, so they're going to promo it a lot. So unless you have a real reason to fight for those items, like you really want to pick your battles and understand like how you're trying to, the real goal, a lot of the holiday lift is also to have post holiday momentum. So you want to just make sure you're maintaining that momentum. But on items that people are getting super competitive on, like there's no reason in really trying to fight that. Like they're trying to just clear out their inventory, like let it happen, so to say, and then kind of go back into battle. So but I do think it's really important to try to maintain that momentum.
Yeah. It's just super interesting because for the longest time, people have looked at total opportunity on Amazon as, being the largest one that's out there. But as we're just talking today, there's a new, I think, strategy that people are picking up on, especially with everything that's going on with Amazon as a whole. I mean, they're not doing any more package prep. They're keep pushing more and more back onto the brand. And there's no super large payoff at the end unless you continually working hard to maybe you get to, be the top 5 in a search term. But with Walmart, if you craft the right strategy for a smaller brand, there's a clear path to getting on shelf and having that next level moment, right? If you're doing it right? Like everything's got to be done. But it's interesting just while you're talking, like in my mind, if I'm a brand, I am looking at Amazon absolutely for brand awareness, right? But I'm looking at Walmart actually more strategically from the standpoint of if I really want to grow and become a household name, I'm starting with a plan on Walmart to get me on shelf. And that's completely different than I think people have been looking at it. People look at it from the standpoint of, oh, well, it's only, 3 to 5%, sometimes maybe 10% of Amazon. It's not worth it. Like, I think that's wrong. I think
100%. And sometimes brands are like, "Oh, I'm not going to get started on marketplace because I'm only interested in getting store." But then it's like the merchant, like from the merchant's perspective, like they have items on shelf. They don't need your item. It's more about you might be an innovative solution and all that, but the way they're looking at it right now is like they need enough of a reason to take something else off of shelf.
You need to, you need to be able to walk into the buyer and prove that when you put your brand, then they put your brand or your product on that shelf space, it is going to outsell and make them more money, not just break even, because they're just going to break even. They have no incentive to change the planogram, shelf height, whatever it might be. Like they're not going to do that. But if you can show them or demonstrate, listen, online, I'm outselling these guys 5-1 and we're adding 5 points to margin. Okay, well, now we can have a conversation about, hey, what if I put you on store shelf? What's going to happen? Because it's going to be really tough to unseat the current incumbent without that conversation.
100%, exactly.
Oh, this is awesome, man. Like, this is awesome. So we covered a bunch of stuff here. Like, what is, like, in your mind, what are like key takeaways that you think brands should have and things they should be thinking about with either Walmart, the marketplace in general, or, Q4 holidays?
I would say double down on content optimization. Retail media is just going to continually get more expensive. So whatever you could drive organically, and even from a retail media standpoint, whatever retail media you drive is just going to go further based on how well organically you're optimized on Walmart. So that's kind of number one. Number two is, there's a lot of ways to drive traffic to Walmart.com and grow your Walmart.com sales. I would say so. Just definitely look at some of the avenues, especially if your conversion rates are strong and you're getting some traction. Like definitely look in some of the avenues. There's some partnerships to do Google traffic. We have some solutions to drive influencer traffic to Walmart. Now with on-site display becoming, more affordable, like there's a lot of different things and avenues to really look at. And it just depends on the brand, the products, your competition, your budgets. But there's definitely a lot of different things to look at for how to really drive Walmart sales if that's what you're looking for. And then, I would say as it relates to, holistic strategy, you really get the most value when you tie in your digital strategy to your current store approach or your future kind of store plans and store distribution. So definitely like working with brands on those types of initiatives.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time today. Thanks for being a great friend, partner, supporter of the network, and tons of brands in it. Encourage everybody to have a follow-up conversation with Michael over at SellCord. With that, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks, everybody, for listening in.